what you were saying about football, I always find this, that we talk about mental health and there's a lot of campaigns going on, but I find that in sport, it's so conflicting because of exactly what you said. It's a manager would immediately see that as a weakness, or not necessarily because they maybe have that view or it's their fault, but because of the pressures of the game, that they can't risk taking a risk on that player because they've got to win the game because of that relegation promotion or that amount of money or whatever, or the owners, or about getting sacked. So how can that shift so that players can speak openly about mental health? Because like you said, everybody's feeling it anyway. So it's almost like there's all this fear and anxiety, which is 100% normal, that's been completely repressed, that everybody knows about. But as long as you don't speak about it, because if you air it, then that can be seen as, like you said, a weakness. I just think it's so conflicting. And I think unless we culturally think differently about it, how is it going to shift things?
Yeah, I think like that's such it's a deeper and broader question than like, because it's like, so fundamentally what we're saying is that like the structure of the game would need to change, because we're saying what is the driver of that pressure. So it's like, it's the pressure of the game which causes that insecurity, which means people cannot be open enough or be vulnerable enough, because they may risk getting hurt, or they may risk causing detriment to their own self. But then on the flip side, it's like, why does everyone love the game? Because of the pressure.
But then do you think you can still have the pressure? Because there's nothing wrong with pressure as long as you can be open, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you still have the pressure? Because I think pressure's fine to an extent, as long as you can be open and talk about mental health openly, because then that's how you actually cope with the pressure. So actually it's beneficial for everybody because you get a better result. There you go.
Yeah, precisely. But then it's like, but then you need the powers that be to have that level of empathy to manage that level of openness and not be influenced by that in their decision making. So it's like, so you need, so I think we're it's progressing. Of course it's progressing. It's that you look at 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, of course it's progressing. So really, like, where we're going to, like, is people, you need, you need, like, in clubs, like, to have like a real deep understanding of people and of human beings, and like, and I think that's where ultimately it needs to get to. It just depends on how quickly and what are the drivers of us getting there, because it's like, do we have to lose more people to the pressures of the game in order for real positive change to be made, or can we take it upon ourselves to actually implement some structures or support the various people or the teams within the game or within the sport to actually allow people to express themselves however they choose. So yeah,
it made me think, I was going to ask you about managers that you've worked under and maybe good managers that are empathetic, but when you said that we've lost in the game, it made me think of Gary Speeds, because I know you played under him for Wales, and I knew him fairly well as well, and did some stuff with him when he was manager of Sheffield United. What was that like for you when that happened?
That was, it was extremely difficult. And I think because where he sort of, we looked at him as, like a father figure, because he brought a group of young players together and implemented his experience in the game of, understanding what it took at a top level, the discipline, the level of attention to detail, the analysis. He brought that to Wales. He was the first one, and when he did that, like, he brought together that group, which ultimately obviously had the success of the Euros, and now obviously future generations, they're all experiencing that same, the benefit. Like, it was fundamentally down to him. And I think so when we were, when obviously we found out about the news, like, it was it was so difficult to take because you couldn't comprehend why he would do that. You know, you didn't like speaking with him, like he made you feel secure. He made you feel, yeah, almost at peace with yourself. Like he was just so like, it was incredible. And so, but then to think that, you know, he was in a place where that had to happen, or, you know, he felt that that was his only choice or his only option, like it's extremely difficult to process. And I think it affected everyone in that group, in a way where actually, it was a challenging time. And obviously, his young family at the time, his boys, and it was really difficult. And it just shows the importance of having people, and being able to communicate and being able to express yourself, because there was something there where he felt he couldn't express himself. And so I think it definitely shaped a big group of that core, and me included.
Yeah. Did you ever speak to anyone, or did you said it's importance of communicating? Who do you communicate to? Is it your family, or did you ever speak to anyone around that time or now?
Yeah, I think I speak to my family. We've got quite relatively close family, and it was just a difficult time. And I think who do I personally speak with? I've had some really great mentors over the years, and like some great people who have believed in me, and and I'm extremely grateful for that. The likes of Dermot Drummy, who again, he obviously passed away, similar to Gary Speed, and he was the one who, as a 10-year-old on trial at Arsenal, he pointed me out in a group of 35 boys and said, he's the one we want. And next thing I knew, I was up at Arsenal's training ground at London Colney, Shenley, and meeting with Liam Brady, meeting with Patrick Vieira, meeting with Arsene Wenger. And that as a 10-year-old, that was down to Dermot Drummy, and because he identified, he saw something in me. And then obviously through the years, then the next sort of figurehead who sort of helped guide me in my career was obviously Eamon Dolan, who was the academy manager at Reading, and former professional footballer, and he was again another father figure for me as a kid at Reading. And he was actually a pivotal figure in me recovering from my injuries. He would always give me that belief. And, whenever I was around him, he'd say, you'll be back, kid. You'll be back, son. You'll be back, kid. And unfortunately, he's passed away of cancer. And, so it's, you go through, like, it's just, I think having those pivotal figures in your life, really do help. But obviously losing them, it is really tough. But ultimately it makes you realize the impact that they had on your life. So in essence, you almost want to give more for yourself and give that to other people too. And so I think as I said, I've been fortunate enough to have people like that in my life. And now I have obviously my family, and who I'm able to communicate to, with. So very fortunate and grateful in that sense.
Yeah, and they must have been huge losses, and at the same time, you can see how much impact they had on you, and hear it in your voice. What would you were talking about the importance of mentorship. What would you say to any younger, like lad or lass, actually, girl or boy, coming through professional sport?
It depends. Like, to be honest, like I would just, I would just say, what do you want? I'd ask them. I'd want to know what they want, and if whatever they said, like I would just say, the first thing I'd say is that you can achieve it, and then I would say, but you want to be happy, like be happy, like you don't need things, and this is the world that we live in. I've got 3 kids, and it's. they go to school, and I see what they come back with and what they say and how they communicate. And like, you can see we live in, you know, a consumer driven society. You know, it's very consumerism. It's like, you know, we're defined by what we have around us, you know, what objects we have, what things we can, you know, buy. And really, if you go deeper in life, you realize that actually, you know, you begin to think about things like the soul and things like the spirit and things like, you know, the, you know, faith. You know, it goes deeper than anything material that we have. And so I would, you know, make sure that whatever they're searching for, whatever they want, they realize it's already within them. And I think that would be the biggest, you know, thing that I would want to, you know, get across and communicate. And I think when you realize that as a being, you become limitless. Like nothing can hold you back, because you already have everything that you need. So yeah,
I think everything shifts when you don't put it into something that's material. And what would you say to anyone struggling out there at the moment? What things have helped you in the past?
I would say, you know, I think it's obviously you have to be able to communicate to how you're feeling, but sometimes, like, you're not always going to have that, because like we said, like in sport, most often you can't communicate with your manager. You might not even be able to communicate with your peers, because, you know, they might, you know, the fear of, you know, losing them alongside you. Like, there's so many different dynamics, and that's just within sport, let alone in, you know, in the office environments, work environments, you know, whatever it is. And so family environment. So I think the biggest thing, like, that I would say to anyone is, like, just, you know, understanding yourself. And you have to understand, like, why you're feeling and thinking certain ways. And I think we get taught early on, you know, growing up, and the information that, you know, we get given, you know, in society in this day and age, it's almost like we get taught that we're in like a feedback loop. So whatever we experience, we're taught we must feel, right? So, okay, like, someone calls you a name. Okay, I'm unhappy. Why did they call me that name? Yeah, that's not nice. Like, then it's not nice. So it's not nice. So I'm going to feel unhappy. So this feedback loop is, like, really detrimental to how you feel and how you think. And I think what you want to try and do is, like, try and break, you know, you have to break that, because you have to realize that nothing externally can truly impact you internally. And what I mean by that is that you ultimately become, you know, the master of how you feel because of how you think. So it's like that, I think, is what if that can be taught and really felt, then you realize that when you wake up today, regardless of where you are, what you're doing, anything external in your life, you can decide how you're actually going to feel. And I think that is really when you can empower yourself and really find solace and, find yourself, essentially. And I think this is when you look at, you go back in history and you read about, like the beings that had, a real, aura, or times of, like, real real happiness. Like, I think that was the core philosophy. And I think because of the world we live in today, which is phenomenal because of the technological innovation and the access to information, etc., we have, it's made us really, like, look outside of ourselves at every single opportunity. And actually what that has meant is that we've lost who we are. And so I think, like, bridging that gap and pulling that gap back, and connecting your body with your mind and your soul and your how you feel, I think is the key to feeling.
Yeah, it's like constant distraction. We've almost become more unhappy because it's just sensory overload all the time, and constant wants and needs. How did you get to that stage then? Do you think, are you at that stage where you can just go, I'm in control of how I feel, and anything that comes in, you aren't affected by it? Like, what's been the process for you?
No, I think like you're always going to be affected by anything like around you. Like no one's like living like the Buddha out here. Like that's a fact. But what you can look at is like your fractionary period. So how long are you in that state, right? So it's like someone cuts you up on, you know, the motorway. You're angry, you're annoyed. Like certain people will take that anger and that annoyance with them for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, what I would say is like, you know, I'll be out of that within, you know, half a second. It's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. You know, they must be in a rush. No, must be. They could be emergency. Like actually, no. Like please go on. Like no. Like you know. So it's like shifting that mentality. So yeah, I would say that is, yeah, that's what I, you know, sort of that's what I try and, you know, do anyway.
Yeah, thinking outside of yourself. I think that's a really good point. I think we're often like, what the, and then we're not seeing what somebody else might be going through or what that circumstance is. It's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you. Thank you so much.
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, and yeah, hope to catch up with you again soon.